Hi, everybody. I'm Parimala and I'm from Bangalore. And we're very thrilled to bring Dr. Vidya to you today through the episode of Hello Swasthya. But before I get started, I'd like to take a moment to wish all the lovely women who are logged into this call a very, very warm Women's Day. And, there's so much that we do, so many different roles that we don, and, we work tirelessly, both inside the house and outside the house. But I think the bigger role that we really play in our families is to act as emotional shock absorbers. There is so much of invisible load that we carry just to get one day right in the household. And a lot of times we fail to acknowledge that to our own selves, forget our families, right? So I wish that each and every one of us take time out to deeply honor and appreciate the deep value that is placed inside of us, and and hope that we don't limit it just to the 8th of March, but then we choose to do it every single day of our lives. With that, let's get started. And, we understand Dr. Vidya's professional accolades and her academic qualifications actually speaks volumes about the passion that she carries for her work, but yet a very warm welcome to you, Dr. Vidya, and we would love to hear you go ahead and talk a little bit about your professional background.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tiny and Parimala, for this kind introduction. And I extend a very, happy Women's Day to all the wonderful women who have tuned into this, event today. And thank you, Parimala and Ravi, for hosting this for all of us. And so I'll just introduce myself. I'm Dr. Vidya Rao. I'm working as a consultant oncopathologist at Narayana Health City in Electronic City of Bangalore. I've done my MBBS and from JSS Medical College in Mysore. After that, I went to Mumbai and I trained both my MD residency and a fellowship in oncopathology. I was very interested in cancer diagnosis and being a part of the cancer management from very early on. So it's been cancer management from the day one. And since I had to come back to Bangalore, I'm here and I'm so happy to be joining you all today for this wonderful session.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Vidya, as somebody who was raised in the 80s, I remember, my grandmother getting diagnosed with diabetes. And back then, it was not so rampant. It was, a huge upsetting factor in the household. A lot of things, went for a toss. Just the way that she had to live her life had changed. Her daily choices had to be, a little different. And it was almost as if all hell had broken loose. And 20, 30 years down the line, I think the host of lifestyle disorders that all of us are grappling with have just multiplied many, many folds. And I'm sure in your line of work, you would have also encountered a few observations. So, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think you rightly brought it up with the diabetes. I think the biggest kind of problems that we all saw with our, grandparents or parents used to be hypertension, diabetes, and obesity, more or less coming onto the later half of life, the midlife crisis. But what has largely changed, which is very visible, is obesity starting in young children and teens and young adults, and which is why the hypertension or the diabetes, all of that is also in the 20s and 30s, and the kind of incidence of cancers that we are seeing these days, I think the incidence of cancers were mostly in the elderly, and there used to always be a family history of it. That's how people knew of cancer in the earlier decades. But now every family has somebody whom you know very closely who has been fighting cancer, right? And it is not with the family history, it's not age barrier. I mean, it's very, very rampant, and it is there in young kids, it's there in young adults, it's there in old adults. So it leaves a lot to understand what is really happening. And it's no more age related or something which a family or the hereditary or the genetic alone predisposing something as complex as a cancer. So that definitely has changed a lot. Yeah.
That is so true. And I think I'll just call you Vidya because it is very difficult for me to address you as Dr. Vidya. For many of you who don't know, Vidya and I are related. We are sisters, and it's very complex for me to call her as Dr. Vidya. But Vidya, do you want to talk a little bit about what are the various lifestyle factors that kind of increases the risk for somebody to develop cancer? And when does it really start brewing? At what age brackets? So let's say somebody gets detected, in their 30s or in their 40s. How many years before does the real onset start, and what influences the onset? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So there are well understood syndromes and genetic predispositions, right? It runs in the family. Sometimes, you have families where you see endometrial cancers, colonic cancers, and breast cancers running very frequently. It is usually these three, but it keeps happening in every generation. Those are the kind of generational cancers which are um, genetically related. Apart from that, what is interesting, which not a lot of people might know about, is infections can also be a big trigger for developing cancers, right? I mean, you look at HPV, a human papilloma virus, which is so robustly linked with cervical cancer. Now, that is the kind of cancer every woman would have had at some point of time in her life. But why do some people actually develop cervical cancer and why some people don't? And that is largely related to the immunity. If can your body actually clear off that infection, or do you let that infection persist and then the whole process of the cancer starts off? The same thing even with gastric cancers, infections with a bacteria which is called as Helicobacter pylori. Now, if you're eating a lot of junk, it's very likely you're dealing with a Helicobacter pylori infection, and all this excessive burping, the reflux, it's largely related to that. Now, if you're not handling that issue then and there, persistent infection continues, and it is a big and very well understood risk factor for developing stomach cancers. Another infection which can be related to yeah, cancers of the lymph nodes, it's called an Epstein-Barr virus. Again, it's actually a virus which is like a respiratory flu, but again, it causes cancer in some people and it does not cause cancer in some people. And again, it is largely related to the immunity of the person, right? And of course, lifestyle choices like smoking, alcoholism, and poor dietary habits. Like if you're not eating food which is rich in fiber, which is rich in variety, and if you're consuming a more of animal fats or red meat, those definitely are risk factors, especially for colonic cancers. These are proven. Okay. And definitely physical activity also plays a big role in indirectly in contributing to carcinogenesis if there is a lack of it. And yeah, and the whole umbrella of metabolic disorders, be it in obesity and especially since today is Women's Day, I think PCOD is so rampant. Every next woman is dealing with it. And I think, there was a time when I think a lot of people understand PCOD as a probably insulin resistant and a more predisposition to diabetes and probably a problem to conceive and fertility. But what a not lot of people actually realize and understand is it is a highly hyperestrogenic state. And that actually predisposes to cancer, especially of the endometrium. And trust me, Parimala, it is it is very depressing to see, 29-year-old, 30-year-olds biopsies where you have to call it cancer. And it's not an easy diagnosis to go down. Any young woman who's probably just married and who's thinking of conceiving. And these are probably not, I mean, people are probably not aware that this can actually even be, the causative for endometrial cancers, right? So, yeah, and obesity also is a big risk factor for colonic cancers, for liver cancers, for breast cancers. You name it. You name it. You name the organ, and obesity is a very important risk factor. So yeah, that's largely the risk factors for in general.
That's a lot to process, right? So, do you also want to talk a little bit, Vidya, about how gut health, how chronic inflammation, and how better dietary choices can, kind of put you at a greater advantage, and how it can preempt a few things for individuals generally?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic topic that you brought up because this is the most, upcoming field even in research, right? So, gut health. So yeah, when we're living, so what happens in pregnancy, right? All of us are fetuses and embryos at some point of time in our, mom's wombs, right? But what you would probably think is that the gut health of the mother is probably not influencing the child. But in reality, it is. You're acquiring your primary gut flora from your mother in utero. Okay. And so many times I feel that, as people, we take our lives for granted. But if it comes to our children, we're ready to go down the extra mile. So, I think not many people are aware that, your gut health is coming when you're actually in your womb and through the process of even delivery, the first flora that is coming and colonizing your entire gut is actually from your mom's, genital tract. And after that, it is so many environmental modifications. And why is this so important, right? I mean, the interaction of the gut flora with the immunity, which is there even at your gut level, it is very complex and it presents so much to what is happening in the rest of your body. Okay, it can keep inflammation in check as well as it can trigger inflammation. It is really that beautiful symbiosis of what is really forming your flora in your gut, right? And this is one thing which is sort of in the causative aspect of it, but what a lot of people don't know about is that it actually even influences the treatment of cancers, so there are a lot of cancers. So if I'm looking at breast cancers, right, there are some tumors which have more of immune cells, and there are some cancers which don't have immune cells, right? And the kind of tumors that have more of immune cells, the body is actually trying to kill those cancer cells. And that's a very good thing because you can give so much therapy to it and it responds better because your own body is able to fight it out. And gut health has a big implication in, in fact, transforming the phenotype of how a tumor looks like. And the possibility of gut transplant is actually a very upcoming area of research and possibly even therapeutics, Yeah.
So I think it all boils down to building better immunity, right?
Absolutely.
And what, according to you, would build better immunity? What are the things that probably people need to focus a little bit on as part of daily living that, gives them a little bit of a better edge, a little extra edge?
Yes, I think it's just building a good discipline into your routine, waking up early, and eating a variety of meals, and a diet which is rich in fiber, rich in micronutrients and well balanced. I mean, none of these trendy fad diets, they don't help you in the long run. And yeah, I mean, uh, immunity also in the sense of cutting down all the stress factors. Like if you are having lifestyle choices of smoking and alcoholism, it's really important to cut that down, because that would again mean a very inflammatory status. And again, that is again very indirectly related to your immunity, apart from eating well and maintaining a very physically active lifestyle. I think it is quite a challenge in today's time and era to have that motivation to, wake up every single day and commit yourself to some sort of an activity for yourself. And yeah, I think these are largely the most important things that I would put them down.
Fantastic. And Vidya, I'd really like to know what's your take on, food that gets ordered in and, family dietary choices that define what gets built as a culture for young children in the household.
Absolutely. I think it's a very important topic that you've brought up. Um, uh, I think as parents, when we are, raising our children, you do realize that the habits are easier to build when you yourself are following them, right? I mean, if you are normalizing eating food from outside every single meal, your child is going to do the same. And your child is going to ask for fries. They're not going to eat that, spinach ka sabji that you have made with great love. And so I think it is really about building habits as a family. And I think the responsibility lies with us, parents, to sort of build it into our next generation, because they can take that forward. And yeah, like I said, I think we would be more than willing and happy to build a certain discipline into our routines for the sake of our children, if not for ourselves, right? So, yeah, home cooked food any day.
And I think for the ones that are looking to start families, I think it starts very young. It starts early on, because discipline in eating, discipline and lifestyle habits is only going to put you on that much of a forward path in your health journey. So another thing that I wanted to ask you, Vidya, is with regards to, comorbidities. When somebody does get detected or diagnosed with cancer, and if there are comorbidities, if somebody is, diabetic, or somebody is on the higher side of weight, how does that impact the line of treatment? Do you want to talk a little bit of how it could be a little restrictive, for the
Absolutely.
practitioner also to go ahead and, treat that patient?
Absolutely. Of course. One is that the body is, fueling its own cancer state. That is one thing. And the second thing is that the modern oncology field has actually progressed a lot. So the kind of treatment that you could offer somebody in, say, 2 decades back, and the kind of options that you have that you can offer to a person with cancer in the modern days, they're very different. But you can bombard somebody with that kind of, robust treatment, provided your body can take it, right? So what usually happens is that obese patients, they also have a certain amount of cardiac component or a liver component, or a kidney component to it, that these are chemotherapeutic drugs. If they're fighting cancer cells, they're probably going to leave a little bit behind, side effects behind your normal cells also. But probably a healthier person will be able to handle that much better, just simply because of better health state, than somebody, who is not. And I mean, some of these drugs are preferentially cardiotoxic or liver toxic, and you can actually not give that. You will actually be giving a second line of treatment, or something a little lower, because you can't amp it up to the level that you would want, right? So it is not like I'm going to wait for the bus to hit me and then I'm going to see what I can do for it. You have to be prepared. You have to be prepared no matter what it is. So it really has to be that you are in good state of health. I mean, cancer today is a very complex topic where it's not just one causative factor or a risk factor. It is very complex. It is multifactorial and the interactions are very complex. So the common question is, why me, right? But I think once you move on from that question, why me? The next question is like, how can I beat this thing? And I think if you really want to beat it down, you need to be focusing on your overall general health as much as you can, even before it hits you. And that's as simple as that.
I think you really hit the nail on the coffin, because it is not about, while I'm on the journey of losing weight, that, I practice a certain set of lifestyle habits. I think it's just about how we learn to live our lives on a daily basis, because that has a cumulative effect. And it also builds better family hygiene, better family routines. So, I think you really put it across very, very well. One last thing that I wanted to ask you, Vidya, is, we were talking about how, with all the right intentions in place, sometimes we falter to do good on the habits that we do cultivate. And, act as a space where, we are being accountable and we're going ahead and building better habits and then building on top of it. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think you've been very kind to use the word sometimes. I think it is always. I think we always falter with building good habits into our lifestyle, and we always need that extra motivation coming from somewhere or the other. And I think the only way to do it is the best way to do it, which you're already doing. It is building a robust community, because together we can, right? I mean, you're going to probably have the motivation running on for a couple of days or probably a week, but eventually your work, family stress, everything takes more precedence. So how do you really build that? What will really make you wake up and go to that workout again, or say that, no, I'm not going to binge eat today just because I've had a tough day. So I think it's really about building a very supportive community, something which lifts each other up. And once you have that community, I would say bring that home, bring it into your family. Get everybody to build the same kind of habits, because once it becomes a family habit, you're in a very safe and a good space, right? You're just looking out for each other, and I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, it's really difficult to build good lifestyle habits for most of them, including me. I think I would any day have a community sort of motivate me than just wake up every single day with the same level of motivation to go and look after yourself.
Wonderful. I think after we've done everything that's really in our control, right, there is a possibility that, you could develop cancer. So there's a question around, despite, nay, I think the question is around kids eating a lot of junk food, having higher levels of stress than adults sometimes, and not really having a disciplined life. How early would you recommend blood tests, or what kind of preemptive tests would you recommend that people should go in for as part of their routine checkups, and at what age brackets? Maybe you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, sure. So, blood test is not something that picks up everything, right? I mean, each cancer is very different, and they have different kind of risk factors. So what I would say is that yes, I mean, so since we are in the topic of Women's Day, I would first focus on the women-related cancers. So if you probably have, if you're younger in age group, so what usually happens in PCODs is that the cycles are anovulatory. You're probably not bleeding for months on together, and then suddenly you have a period which is simply not ending, right? That is the time to go and get tested, right? It could be a simple ultrasound and a biopsy or whatever it is, but that's really important to actually go to the doctor and not just ignore that. And similarly, irrespective of your age, plenty of YouTube videos on the internet about breast self-examination. And I think every woman should know how to examine her breasts herself. And the key is to pick up these cancers early on because there is still hope and a lot of hope, if you're picking it up early on, right? And of course, ovarian cancer is unfortunately something that presents at much later stage because there is much room in the abdomen, right? I mean, more the reason why you should probably have a leaner stomach to sort of know that it is bulging out abnormally, right? If you have probably too much fat around your stomach, you would probably not know that there is something 10 centimeter or 11 centimeter growing in your abdomen, right? So those are the things, but blood tests are still largely limited to picking up metabolic alerts in terms of the lipid profiles or the sugar tests and more of the risk factors in the metabolic syndrome era. And if you're talking about the younger adults, but of course, depending on what the symptomatology is of a certain person, the GI cancers or the colonic cancers, they have different serum markers, but they're generally not done on a routine basis.
Right, I understand. A lot of things are largely symptom driven. So when there is when an alarm bell goes off is when probably certain set of tests are ordered. But then in your opinion, for somebody who's say over the age of 30 or 40, and especially if they're women, what kind of tests would you recommend apart from, self-examination?
Pap test, definitely. Pap smears are something so, so very important because these tumors are deadly. They go on to very high stage cancers and they are little difficult to treat also, but they're so easily preventable. And the beauty of pap tests is that an abnormal pap test actually gives, so if you're on a regular pap screening every year or 2 yearly once also for that matter, roughly it takes about 10 years from the infection to the cancer, right?
Oh,
So it gives you so much time to act on it. And if you're picking it up, if you're picking it up early, it's practically cured, right? So you don't want to let it become a cancer and then take it on head on. Pap smears are very simple tests. They are in the OPDs and anybody can go and get it done. And yeah, that is something that I would really would like to drive home apart from the self-breast examination. These two are largely very, very preventable diseases. I think the outlook for breast cancers has also largely improved. And I mean, a tumor which is 1 or 2 centimeters, barely anything in today's oncology improvements. So it's all about catching it early.
early. I think there are a couple of other questions that have popped up. One is around, is pap smear the same as biopsy? I
Okay.
think it is not.
It is not. So pap smear is just it's a cytology screening tool. So somebody would just put a brush and just roll it around the cervix. It's not a biopsy. Biopsy is actually taking a punch. It's a little more invasive. And people wouldn't order for a cervical biopsy unless there is something abnormal that is coming up either on your pap test or something like a HPV high risk DNA, which is more or less done on the same cervical material.
I think there's also a very beautiful question around young girls are being given HPV vaccination. So are they truly relevant? And does it really protect against uterine cancers?
So not really around the uterine cancers. So HPV vaccine is specifically for cervical cancers, right? And well, it is a very controversial area of discussion. And I mean, yeah, most of the guidelines do recommend it. I would say that, but yeah, it is an individual informed choice that one can make whether they want to go for an HPV vaccination or not. But irrespective of the HPV vaccination or not, the screening for cervical cancers is really very, very important, and that gives a lot of benefit, I would say. I mean, it's an individual choice. It is an informed choice that somebody has to make whether they want to go for an HPV cancer vaccine or not. But in case you do choose not to go for it, that is also okay. But go for the pap smear screenings.
Fantastic. I think there's also a question around inflammation, muscle inflammation. Does that relate or correlate in any way for cancers in women?
So an interesting topic. So muscle inflammation is what we generally see in, autoimmune conditions. Some of them do present with muscle, inflammation, what we call as myositis, very commonly seen with autoimmunity. Now, autoimmunity need not be in the context of only muscle, and it could be in the context of different organ systems. So, it could be a marker. Yes, autoimmune conditions are a predisposition for cancers in so many organ systems. And I think the prototype of it is thyroid cancer, thyroids, Hashimoto's is something which is a predisposition to papillary thyroid carcinomas, which is a very common kind of a thyroid cancer. So it is a very well-known association. And so how it generally works is that uh, normal cells are challenged with so much inflammation. There is injury all around the cell. So there is injury and then there is repair. There is injury and there is repair. Now, how many times can a normal cell repair itself correctly over and over and over again, right? So every single time a cell is repairing itself, it's actually dividing. And, what starts happening is that it starts collecting mutations. And when those mutations overgrow, it starts multiplying like it's not in any, control of the regular cell cycle metabolism, right? So it's just all over the place. So that is how actually inflammatory states predispose to cancer. And one way to work around it is do whatever you can to sort of put that in check.
Absolutely. So if a Swasthya coach, if you're logged in today, and if a Swasthya coach is working with you and is asking you to eat in a certain way, is asking you to exercise in a certain way, is asking you to build certain lifestyle habits, it is preemptive in nature. It is not something that is standalone in a certain point in time. It weaves into the overall wellness story. It is going to ensure that you're healthier for a longer period of time. And if you're somebody who's logged in today and you're just getting started with Swasthya, or you haven't started your journeys yet, I think I hope the conversation with Vidya has kind of given you insights to understand why you need to make sure that you start proactively attacking all of these bleeps and alerts that your body is throwing out to you in so many different forms. It could be in terms of the blood test results that's coming through, or the aches and pains that are unexplained in your body, or the various other symptoms. These are all Morse code signals that your body is trying to send out to say that, hey, I need attention, please start working on me, right? And that's exactly what is the mission for Swasthya Coaches. And we're very, very proud to do the work that we do. And thank you so much, Vidya, for joining us today and spending so much time in talking in layman terms, because I know this for a fact that a lot of times when we have conversations, when she's talking to me about cases, she uses very complex medical terms, and I'm like, boss, I'm not a doctor, I need layman language, right? And I think she did a terrific job today. Thank you very much for taking time out after a busy week and after a super hectic day. Really appreciate that. And with that, back to Shamini.
Thank you so much.